So I'm really pleased to welcome to this stage, to center stage, Bojan Lous and Franklin K.R. Cline. Two exciting young poets, two exciting young Indigenous writers, Native American poets, and we're going to hear from experiences both from out west, Bojan here coming in from Arizona, Franklin down from Milwaukee. We all see Franklin around campus all the time, so we know Franklin. But he's going to take us to Kansas City occasionally too. It's unavoidable. Where he's from. Or from Kansas City? Or just, yeah, I figured. No one could love the Royals that much if they weren't from Kansas City.
God bless them if they didn't.
I'm going to introduce Franklin first, and then Bojan, I'll come up and introduce him in the second part of the reading. Franklin K.R. Cline is an enrolled member of the Cherokee Nation. He's a Ph.D. candidate in English creative writing at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and a member of Woodland Pattern Book Center's board of directors. And Bojan and another poet, who's the other poet? Reading tomorrow night at Woodland Pattern?
Sherman Bitsui.
And Sherman Bitsui reading tomorrow night in Milwaukee at Woodland Pattern Book Center. So go back for more tomorrow, or tell your friends in Milwaukee to check it out. Woodland Pattern is an amazing place. Franklin is also the book reviews and interviews editor of Cream City Review. His first book, So What, which is available for sale and signing after the reading, is available now via Vegetarian Alcoholic Press. And he teaches, laughter is appropriate, I think. And in Franklin's poems, there's a kind of widening and narrowing in motion that happens from the moments of everyday life to suddenly you'll be seeing things on a much larger canvas, from baseball to lots of other subjects. And I think that movement, and also a formal movement from sonnets to poems sprawling across the page and across many pages. And I'm really excited to hear them. And I wanted to say a little bit about listening. You'll hear the poets, so I don't need to say as much about them, but thinking about just how to listen at a poetry reading, and to listen in a very receptive way rather than a projective way. Rather than thinking like, I need to be figuring out what's happening. Just let it come in. A lot of you I know in my class, and maybe that are in other classes too, the idea of just jotting things down or just letting yourself receive what's happening, and then later you can sort of think about it. And I think that makes the experience of a poetry reading, it takes away that anxiety of I'm lost. There's no being lost. It's like just like when you're walking down the street, all kinds of things are happening. You can be aware and attentive or not attentive. Just be attentive. You don't have to say what it all means. And I think that can really change the experience of getting to hear two great poets read. So put yourself in that state of mind, and please welcome Franklin Cline.
I hate microphones. Can you hear me? In the very back? You good? Thank you. So what? And now all the sports video games got stories where some prodigy gets hurt younger and comes back older and wiser. And then he wins the big one. And his success in the face of it echoes the big longing we share. And then in the game, some simulacra of the people who yell at each other on the TV yell at each other on the TV's TV about it. And the real people on the TV yell at each other about that. And then equally real people in bars yell at each other in disagreement about what the TV men yelled. And all this born from this stolen land, the simulacra, the hurt, the yelling, the men, the protagonist, the comeback. So what? One day you wake up and you're responsible for the world. Ephraim says to me in the wintertime across the lake on the phone. I tried to transmit my love for him to him, but I don't know. Over beers brewed in Kansas City, Kumar tells me about his thesis in chemistry examining chirality. He puts his hands up to illustrate the concept of non-superimposable mirror images, points at a spiral staircase we can see through a window and says it's like that. We don't have the credentials to go into the room he's looking at. Is it my fault my iTunes only plays men when I put my music on shuffle? The universal emotion of the face crumbling in anguish and or confusion? Do the machines we build reflect our own biases? I was named, I think, for my great-great-grandmother, who was renamed by or for the Dawes role. Lots of non-Jaligi, which is Cherokee for Cherokee. Lots of non-Jaligi tried to pass as Jaligi for the role. I was working in the lab late one night. Kumar and I went to the art gallery, and it made the sunset we drove into going north on I-35 seem so urbane. My father told me the history of my name, but I'm not sure I buy it. Chance says when the praises go up, the blessings come down. My dad wanted to name me X. We live in a thieved country, run by thieves, and I love buffalo wings. You never liked that song till you heard it in a car commercial. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. I wore a hat that said KC on the front and Chiefs on the back to a brewery today. I'm a fan of the Chiefs. Nikki and Noho and I drank Jameson and talked about the end of the planet, how it's all really boiling, how like dandelions we remain active. Jenny Holzer tweeted, "It is heroic to try to stop time." I told Soam and Sawar and Gassan about how I cried when the Royals lost the World Series and I cried when the Royals won the World Series. I felt so empty when I realized I'd spent all this energy rooting for this thing I have no impact on. It's getting harder and harder to figure out who the joke's on, but it all hinges on land. Earlier, I had to use the thesaurus to find the word credentials. I asked Rachel for the word, but she didn't know what I meant, but she knew what I meant. My doctor said to get my heart rate up for 3 hours a week. I thought that was already happening on account of this stumpy life. So what? Who do you love? I meant to start this poem eloquently, with an allegory, but I told Frisia and Anja about it, and now I can't tell it again. The football games are over, and thousands of us are still drunk, angry at the finish. We didn't play, but we cheered and were mad our team lost, or they won, but they didn't win good enough. 10,953 white boy blues bands played Who Do You Love this weekend to indifferent patrons in the continental United States. I smile at everyone now because you never know. Few smile back. It's tough to not be a wreck. It's tough to not be. I read the newspaper every day, and every day I rip it up, and every day I put it in the compost. My drinking is killing me. It snowed the first time this season, Saturday morning. I woke up and looked out the window and saw the snow in our car and thought about cleaning the snow off the car, which means I remembered and relived every time I cleaned snow off the car. What is your identity? What is your politics? Will you be okay? How do your babies look? I would have been a bad blues singer because I can't sing. I have some kind of the blues. It's in the air, molecular. Blues singers take what's in us and put it outside of us, but then we got to put it back in. I parked the car on the land, which was stolen. The Chiefs lost to the Titans 22-21, so I put on my shirt for the Thunder. So what? The Royals came back from a 7-1 deficit. Mike Moustakas shellacked a 2-run homer and made it 9-7. Before the evening, I got high and read Frank O'Hara. It's Frank O'Hara's birthday. I want to read a Frank O'Hara poem, but I can't find it on my phone. Here's a Frank O'Hara poem. Nope, it won't work. My phone won't load it. Rachel and I went to dinner and there was a wait, so we got a drink across the street. We are dying. The sun spread its pink fingers. Anytime anything negative happens to a person in power, they deserve it. It was happy hour. Somewhere an animal killed another animal. Meanwhile, we bought groceries. The earth, slowly heating beneath our feet, yoked us together. Gunshots. Gunshots. I played records all day amongst the cats fighting. Now the lights are on. I pulled off the curtains in the living room because I don't like them, and Rachel put them back up because she likes them. The Bucks might win it all, but I doubt it. It is all stolen. I haven't shoplifted in years. I miss it. So what? Satisfied with the cooking shows keeping me stupid, I heat the coffee back up to a nice warmth to match the heat of the day so I can feel like I'm drinking the weather. I put it all into a cup. I can control it. The sun peeks out through the sky, and the sky doesn't do much of anything, which I envy. I asked for a beer at a restaurant, but they didn't have the beer I wanted, so I got a different beer. I'm discovering new products at an alarming rate. I'll never invent a new product. I'll never apply for a patent. It's nice enough to where I could open the windows, but maybe a bit too humid, so I use energy to keep the room my ideal weather. And now clouds float over the sun and mute its bright spray, and the TV tells me who made the best dish. So what? Big ringer. All the killings. How little? So many. Once. To say. Against. But how big when, of course, so many do say against? My reflex is always to say, I don't know, like when I go to the doctor and get my knee whacked, or how the ground gets so hard so quick after the rain. It went down to 57 degrees. A big sigh. I mean, how else to keep reiterating the stolen and murder? It just keeps going. On and on. I mean, really. Anything. The less cops know, the better. Today, I listened to a woman recite a poem. It was so true and beautiful. She raised herself up into and became the poem, and I never believed in anything. So what? The tomato plants in the garden aren't growing. I don't know what we did wrong. Maybe they don't get enough sun. There's a lot of weeds on the east and west sides of the tomato plants. The other plants on the other side of the garden are doing great. Rachel cleaned up her side of the closet, and now my side looks like shit. I'm sleeping better now that I drink less. We've only grown 2 tomatoes thus far, and we suspect the neighbors took one because now there's only 1 left on the vine. It rained real nice today. I touched the soil before I came in from work, and my finger slipped into the earth, which reminded me of sex. I don't have more sex now that I drink less, which is not how it used to work. I have gotten more comfortable with being naked. I have gotten more comfortable with being not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of right before I die. I drink more water than I ever have before. I'm reducing my carbon footprint. I've decided I want to be cremated. I've decided I want to give up my organs. I knew a girl in college who died young, and before she died, she raised a bunch of money online, and now her head is cryogenically frozen. You can read about it in the New York Times. Maybe death is how best to get in touch with my body, with nature. I need to sit in the garden. I need to not drink. I feel so uncertain generally. I need to get my guitar restrung. I need to dust. I need to Google 2017 Native American death by cop statistics so I can tell you about them. Some damn squirrel keeps running around our walls. I'm glad it's found a home, but I don't much care for all the commotion, especially when I'm trying to not drink and watch baseball and be in the garden. The neighbors mowed off most of our watermelon. Does watermelon life begin at watermelon conception? The planting, the turning of the compost, the heat stink from when the lid fell off the compost bucket when I was taking it downstairs? It all devolves usually into argument. I used to be a lot louder than I am now. Old pictures of me not dead in graffitied basements, beer in hand, teeth exposed. The cats hide when it rains. Every day, death. So hey, everything. Every day, it feels good to be sweeping. I bought a new TV and then I lost the remote. It doesn't have any buttons on it, so it just sits on the table waiting. Ileana said into her vodka, every poem written by a man with an eye was a big dick going at her face. Every poem written by a man with an eye was a big dick going at her face. Then she won the biggest poetry prize you can win. We live in a thieved country run by thieves, and I love buffalo wings. We have agreed to never call the cops. The check engine light has been on in my car for about a week now. On, in? I think so. I need to get back in touch with my body, with nature. I walked in the grass barefoot, but it just made my feet itchy. So those are poems from my book, So What? I'm going to read some new poems from my manuscript, which is called Trail Mix, which is about the Trail of Tears, ish. Poem in which the last word is and. Precious says us when we talk about mental illness. We remark on each other's yearning. Ephraim would love to hear from me. I call him. He doesn't pick up. Hi, this is Ephraim. Please leave a message after the beep. Thanks. At some point, Ephraim said this into his phone. I sit there, hearing him say it. Him, but not him. I went out for a cigarette with Shanae, and Shanae's pup Murky wouldn't shit. All my friends are buying things. To stave off loneliness, what do we do? What do we do to stave off loneliness? My cat's fur sticks out when she lays on her back like the thick paint on a Van Gogh painting. I like to go to museums and smoke pot in the bathroom. Maybe get a cup of coffee anyway. I'm getting divorced and it's not so bad. I talk to someone on the phone every day. The apartment squeaks happily. Bojan's gonna sleep there. Sometimes I go downstairs and see my neighbors and we have dinner or spark up or both. And poem written while watching Saw 2. The lights like teeth. So the always dying. There's never a fun one where survivors party. Nope. Does your alibi hold? To get hurt? To keep going? Walk. My hair is walking out of my head. I've been walking around the neighborhood thinking about myself mostly entirely. My immediacy, that is. I walk up and down Locust and Burleigh, and sometimes I take the bus and walk around Kinnikinnick. And when we went to the mounds, we parked on something like Mound View Drive, and we could see the nice houses behind what we thought was a mound of Thunderbird. We laid tobacco on it anyway and sang to it. When I am on the phone, I walk around the apartment. The heat walks from the heater to keep the apartment unlike the cold outside. The step, the rhythm. I used to love to dance at dance parties, beer and chaos. The television's noise walks into the space of the room, which walks into me and my genetic memory of walking. Walk. Don't get me wrong. I'm implicated here too. I'm reaping the benefits from this stolen land. I drive mostly on the paved streets where there were grass. Grocery story. Today I went to the grocery store and bought several organic fruits and vegetables so as to keep my health tip-top. And I carried the little blue Cherokee ID card in my wallet, and there was a good deal on seltzer, and they played a song that reminded me of my ex-wife, and I paused and cried by the frozen pizzas. Then I put a frozen pizza into my cart. I walked around the store listening to the music and looked at the cans and stacks and the weird infinite finite nature of the grocery store. It was sunny. I swear there was a woman softly crying by the bread. I am never more alive than when I am filling up my cart. I walked more and more through every aisle, and then it came time to put my things up on the conveyor belt and have them recorded with a satisfying beep. And then I pulled out the small piece of plastic that has all my money on it and gave it to the nice lady who smiled and took my money. I didn't need to give her the card. I could have just walked out. I could have gave her back the card. She could have gave me the card back. She did give me the card back. She reminded me it needed to slide into the little computer which asked a few questions, and there was a man putting my things into a bag for me, and I got into my car on the stolen land, and on the radio they were discussing genetic modification of the Three Sisters foods, how thanks to science the squash will be impossibly strong, the corn will never go bad, the beans will grow beyond our wildest dreams. Poem in which the last word is everything. The darkness is like small animals crawling on top of each other as we pile into Jimmy's rusted 77 Reliant K to go shoplift some vodka to fill our 16-year-old minds with anything other than ourselves. The four of us walk in the grocery store all smiles. We make a point to buy some toilet paper, not enough to attract attention, and aside. Once, we were detained at Walmart while security asked why we needed 200 rolls of toilet paper, why 4 guys needed 200 rolls of toilet paper, and Jimmy said he had real bad diarrhea. And we all laughed, and the cops sighed and eventually let us go and said they'd get us good, real good one day, and afterwards, we righted all over town. Anyway, we had enough TP to warrant our backpack presence in the grocery store and a good start on what we'd need to TP another Jimmy's house later. Alan elbows a jar of spaghetti sauce onto the ground around the time Quentin is walking out. Backpack with 3 Smirnoff handles clanking, and there's a chaos, and somehow they know. And some manager chases after us, and we jump laughing into Jimmy's running car and speed off, and for real, a cop follows us for a few blocks before we take a quick left, right, left and turn into the Sarah that Jimmy lost his virginity's house to garage. Turn into the Sarah that Jimmy lost his virginity to's garage to hang out for a bit while we wait for it all to blow over. Plus, Sarah's brother is a dealer, so we can smoke some in the little box of moonlight. And her parents, good, hard-working Italian folk, second-generation Americans, always have snacks. Later, I will throw up under a streetlight. Then even more later, after Alan gets a blowjob from Jenny, whom Jimmy is in love with, we go out to the other Jimmy's house in the fancy suburbs and let the TP fly. 72 rolls worth floating through the sky like how some clouds look like birds. When we're done, we know we've done something right. We've shown the world how much we matter. For the next couple days, you can see our work from 169 South, the highway that pushes us down back from the nicer houses into our parents' cramped apartments, the whites of the teepee swaying from the trees like surrender flags, like all the stuff surrounding the part of the eye that sees, which the teachers tried to teach us the word for. In vain they tried to teach us while we were too busy plotting how to get away with and from everything. So what? Palpable dread now, all over the silvery slink of each day. We've been listening exclusively to songs that feature real drums and hand claps in order to remind ourselves of the rhythms of humanity. That doesn't work, so we try sex, which doesn't work any better but is more fun. I don't know if I can make it past my Caspers but I try at least a little every day. And, this tarnished and stolen land groans with every step anyway. So I look up. There's a bunch of buildings and shit in the way of the sky. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Franklin. That was great. Yeah. I like the way the neglected microphone would occasionally give this little.
What, did that happen?
Yeah, but in a good way. You were loud enough to get that little drone. And then the Kansas City chorality, was that the rhyme?
Yeah.
That's sort of an amazing rhyme. You had me from that rhyme on. Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Bojan Lous Diné is a poet, fiction writer, essayist, and poetry editor for Red Ink, an international journal of Indigenous literature, arts, and humanities. He teaches various composition courses and other kinds of writing at Arizona State University's downtown campus. His first poetry collection is Currents from BkMk Press in 2017, and he has some copies for sale and signing after the reading, if you like. And when we were walking over, we were talking about how much traveling Bojan's done this year, and Franklin was mentioning that you do travel writing as well, essays and stuff. Yeah, and the poems that I've read from the book, and I'm looking forward to having a copy of it as well. That sense of covering a lot of ground, both and with an intention to sort of digging in deep, whether it's in mines or on mesas or hearing gunshots or the sound of a particular kind of prayer. All these things are there at the same. So there's a tremendous movement and also tremendous digging in. I think that I heard in the poems I was able to see. I'm really excited to hear Bojan Lous. Please welcome him.
Thanks for coming out. There's a bunch of you. It's like, I don't know. I walked in the room and I was like, shit. I feel special. Yeah, I've been traveling a lot this semester and always. I just like to not be home, I guess. I just got back from London. Now I'm here in Wisconsin. Feel weird, yeah. Like I slept in my bed for 2 days, and now I'm gonna sleep on Franklin's floor, I guess. I've never met him before. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, this book, we were talking about this. This book took like 8 years to write. I don't know, how many writers are in the room? Patience, it happens. If you're a writer, you've signed on for a road of disappointment and despair. But it's just how it works, right? This book got rejected 80 times, and then it found a home. So don't fret. Just persistence. I worked many years as an electrician and construction worker in Phoenix, Flagstaff, in Sitka, Alaska. So this book really comes from all the hours I spent alone as an electrician, sort of trying to get through my 12 to 14-hour days, and seeing patterns and trying to create a poetics in my head while I was trying to, like I said, survive the day. It's really hard to write after you work 14 hours, So there's a lot of threes, there's a lot of tercets, there's a lot of like the rule of three. I grew up with three religions, like Catholicism, Mormonism, and my traditional Diné religion. I speak three languages poorly: Navajo, Spanish, and English. And so the basic circuit, a basic electrical circuit is a ground, a hot, and a neutral. So that really sort of informed how I revised and collected this book. So it's from an electrician's point of view, although Also, I used to be a framer and drywaller and roofer. So now I'm a professor, and I can't tell you which one's better, to be honest. No, being a professor's better. It's way better. Shit, yeah. You can teach online, which is amazing. I teach travel writing online, so that makes sense. So, I guess I should stop talking and read you poems. So I'll start with this poem. It's called Electricity, and it is in tercets. The morning roundups, a current leaking to earth, without interruption or fault. Above busted streetlights, the sun buzzes to a cuffed line of deportees, the sheriff's imbalanced authority. Any laborer gathered for a tear out agrees the pleasure of opening walls is the view of what's no longer behind. The restrained motion of a body caught within a fence run between language is a union of shock and memory. I also just got over having like acute bronchitis, so if I cough, bear with me. In keeping with the sort of electrical sort of terms, I'll read these two. So this poem's called Arc Flash. An arc flash is essentially an explosion that happens when a hot circuit touches a metal object and it blows up, and this happens all the time. I've almost blown off my finger. You know, when people do shitty work and you gotta fix it, it's dangerous, right? So arc flash. The stars went off and on, as if wired by the hell-with-it electricians, tired of lighting scrap-patched houses, connected by threads of pre-dawn smoke to invisible weavings in the sky. Dim questions and silent answers. Cattle, gaunt and wanting, grazed between weeds across the valley, interrogated the dirt of wash and creek. How long since you've been clay after rain? Startled awake at midnight and under influence, I sought my car to kill the soft snores beside me. Hauled ass out of urban desert decay to sandstone cliffs 5 hours away where centuries of wind and more recent roadway gusts have made a half-pipe of its base, though not enough to topple the edge of the mesa's level. Hours from Phoenix, oasis greedy and artificial, I needed crystal, my dad's home and ceremony, less familiar mountain tobacco. Not to guide my spirit, used to mornings being lit, but to remind my tongue of blood, cold coffee made by other men's women who dispel me with smokes from cheap packs set within reach on their knees. Maybe they wish, aside from my soon departure, that I shared their danger. Bastards who make home confinement and needs hush. I left and arrived months before the rainy season, though cuts along the cliff face over crystal shimmered with mica, like stars burnt out, taking eons to reveal their absence in myth-heavy constellations. The sun risen isn't for me, cattle being herded, or darkness in the room I left to wake alone. Here, a few cars idle without drivers, warm up before the workday, while smoke from houses vanishes and releases the night sky. Actually, yeah, I'll read this. So this is like one of the first poems that I guess informed this collection, and I think I wrote it in like 2003. So if that gives you any scope. I got my MFA in fiction, so I didn't. I think a lot of the work of an MFA is learning how to take all these disparate objects you're creating and putting them into a collection or organizing them. Thinking about themes and motion. So I mean, I've written hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of poems, all ending up in a fire or the garbage. This one survived for my undergrad, so it's called Red Dirt. I work to be more than roots fed through heat. I work to be more than roots fed through days of heat and dust, evaporating into a brittle husk, withdrawn and left as only remains. Whether stirred out by force or removed in mechanic iron swoops, I'm simple, passed over and dumped onto a pile of old ground, turned up, open to the air. Bound in earth pack, I release seeds, my blood to be windblown and spread. Straining from new foundation, I reach to hold all else, settled, empty of breath. It's good that you noticed like there's a lot of movement in this. I do, like I said, I do travel a lot. And a lot of so this book takes place in Alaska, Phoenix, Flagstaff, Navajo Nation. There's a lot of images. So for instance, I've lived in Philadelphia, I've lived in Singapore, and most recently just moved back from Spain. So all that sort of finds its way into the work. You might not know it, but like I'll see a line and be like, "Oh shit, I wrote that in Singapore." Right? Yeah. Very pleased with myself. Excuse me. So yeah, this poem is like, I guess the first thing I wrote when I moved back from Philadelphia after heartbreak and all that. So I think heartbreak's a good thing. It's like a chance to start over and do something else, right? So it's called Middle of the Desert. For the weight of your bones, my blood thinned. Yesterday, the east-hefted sun dissipated humid, empty air and space comprised of space. Dehydrated cactus and dirt barren to the idea that it's cold here ever. Nostalgia charmed out of a hollow, the feeling failed duty. To you who have departed, walking carefully as hooves on rain-wet granite or other slippery stones, are there heights after plunging from which you'll never rise? Neither of us is yet dead. But when I go before you, refer to me as he or the Diné one. Don't ever name this voltage wanting to hold you when there is no ground. Go to your home, the one you've made, ours that's gone. Rest in yourself and job. If ever an earthquake or small tornado hits again, pound loosened nails back, clean and tape cracks, prep for texture. If left without power or light, trust an electrician who knows luminaries guide only when there are no trees or buildings to shine on. Absent from this desert, stacks of bricks that need to be repointed, leaden Victorian glass unable to hold heat, and roofs that connect every house, trading mold, alternating leaks. Yesterday gone, the sun lifts off your bones, barren weight and humid dirt, caught me cut short saying. So in Diné belief in religion, ideology, whatever you want to call it, when someone passes, we don't ever say their name again. We refer to them as like a pronoun or a description or their sort of relationship to you, right? So that there's a line in there about that. And then this poem's called Baptism for the Dead. A lot of my family is Mormon, and that comes from the Mormon placement program in the like 1950s and 60s, where they would take children off the res and put them with foster families in Utah. Maybe an act of kindness, maybe an act of assimilation and destruction of culture. I don't know, you pick. So I'm not Mormon, though they did baptize me, so they have my soul, I think. But who fucking needs a soul, right? So they do these things called baptisms for the dead, which I think is in direct conflict with Diné ideology, because you're baptizing someone who's dead and you're saying their name, and there's all these sort of problems with it. So this is called baptism for the dead. Don't take my name to the water, a soul with no body to enter. The dead don't share skin with the living, no conduit between. Don't set me in afterlife. My name is my body. Good on time, right? Got like 5 more minutes or something. Y'all hanging in there? Good? All right, cool. I teach as well. My students are so excited I'm traveling because all our classes are online, right? They're like, we don't have to listen to you like talk about arguments of definition. And I don't have to either. Ooh. Yeah. I love it, but like anything, it's a job and it can kind of beat you down. But I have fun with my students. Anyway, I'm going to read some new stuff. The benefit of having taken so long to publish and write this is that it seems like I'm really prolific. But, just keep writing. I just have a bunch of new stuff lying around. And also a lesson, so, for art, what's that quote about great art? Like, artists steal, or whatever, borrow, whatever. If you're a poet, just steal shit, right? So this poem's called Black Days. If you're a Soundgarden fan, Black Days is a pretty dope song. And unfortunately, Chris Cornell, took his own life. So he was one of my heroes. I don't know if you guys are too young for Soundgarden or I don't know. No? Yeah? Shit, all right. Well, if y'all hang out later, we can listen to Soundgarden and get depressed. Black Days, and I dedicated to Adrian C. Lewis. There were 15 scorpions pressed apart with a stick used for stirring paint I need to tell you about. Couldn't tell you how they dwelled. Haven't killed enough. They emerged through cracks in the block wall separating each box of this Cro-Magnon neighborhood. I can tell you I wept, smashing sections as they escaped, moving like those fuckers from alien flicks. Anyway, it's been countless years since I searched the yard perimeter, black light, a false beacon in the muted night. A 9mm nestled against my hip, bullet chambered to blast the skinheads my sister told of, frantic, having driven the city all night. Among deadened asphalt synapses, we wait for dawn's liminal thread to offer blurred visions for sleep. She described a battle between cops and neo-Nazis. I perceived it as singular and internal until somewhere in the conflict the house was entered, ruined, and left as such. This ruin never occurred. It was a wreck, I'm embarrassed to speak on, a false bend, a quarter too far. I want to be clear about the scorpions. My wife crept behind me with her phone, while I, among the apparitions of depression, released the safety and cleared the house of the nothing there. Hateful, I hadn't killed anything. I find that scorpions are ending up in my poems a lot. There's a couple of scorpion images in this book. I live in a house we have orange trees and lemon trees and lime trees and grapefruit trees. And it's an old orange grove, which means that scorpions love to live there. And it's breeding season right now, so they're fucking scary, man. They're so creepy. I'll creep around the yard with a black light, smashing them because they'll be in the house, and my dog will try to eat them and get stung because she's an idiot. But yeah, that's scorpion season, so I'm happy to be here where it's cold. It might not be cold to you, but I'm freaking freezing. This poem is called The Nature of Mortal Illness. As a kid skeptical of pollen plumes making my skin ash, mind migraine heavy, and nasal cavity a sanctuary for deformed crustaceans seeking terrible refuge in a false moisture, I wanted to believe this question. Are my brothers and sisters debris humming because they're what's left? I'm no oceanic world, no fossilized imprint subject to excavation, but a man's sickness has left well enough. Common cold, chromosome infection, viroethnography, southwestern desert lung fungus. If there's safety within the earth, then I'll go there. Otherwise, where do I find me? Is it clear Gila monsters border extinction? You endangered or enamored with this development? Flint, the sacred bolt of thunder, the syringe end of lightning can turn body to ribbons. Quilt it mosaic again, can burn a thirsty land, can armor one against the ill world and suffocate today's protective notion of tomorrow. In our history, the Gila monster might tell you, get your sickness away from me. But it's only to teach you to ask questions correctly, offer the necessary smoke, dispel phobia, and the importance for curmudgeons with wandering syntax. Lesson? If it kills you, spit at it for sure. Kick dirt its way. If it reminds you of your ways, your doubts and regrets, and that shitty relative who molested you, curse it. Shake its hand, which is the hue of your hand, with black magic, ground fine from a loved one's bones. Remember, in agreement with death for death. New tract home subdivisions explode from an imploded aquifer crusted with alkaline skeletons, shaped like a brontosaurus. We're headed there, right? A studied, imagined, subterranean being thing explicated, cited as superfund. That earth, great, once like a marauder murderer, but more Billy Ray Cyrus than Prince. When prospectors and pioneers sweated this tierra, this Nahastzan, they feared the toxic breath and bites of damn near every living thing. See this now, the earth and its things, medicinal, panacea, antipsychotic, whatever the fuck, labeled illegal unless farmy. As a kid, when I think of it now, I was stupid, grunge-trodden, and late blooming bony. I wanted to breathe the confidence to say nice things, to experience keggers. However, I was opposite the decorated locker and shower room. If I possessed venom, I was built over and unable to relocate. But this isn't about high school, which doesn't matter. It's burial in tradition and home. Beyond the urban heat of this concrete desert on land is barren and at times hot piles of yellow cake decorate Diné like the tempting skin of dark frogs, nature's governance, protection. When we fail, our hearts, the blame is inverted, like ice caps for summer, a crucifix for clean water and flowers. You can't end this way. The wind exterminator, a great prop plane dusting the world, a heart so unheart it forgets itself. I think I'll end there. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Bojan and Franklin. I said that there would be a little time for questions if you guys are okay with that. So does anybody have something they would like to ask? All right. You can turn your chairs around and stand.
I like the mic. Franklin hates the mic.
I hate it.
It's a good thing we have one mic.
Yeah.
And okay that we don't have two. That's how it would be done.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
So you said you travel a lot, so I guess what is the coolest place you've been and what is the place that has inspired the most poems, I guess?
That's a good question.
Two-part question.
Yeah. God, it's It's hard. I'd have to say my two favorite cities are Istanbul, Turkey, and Hanoi, Vietnam. I don't know if any of you have been to Vietnam. It's like a very difficult place to travel. It's hectic, it's chaotic. Crossing the street is like a death wish. But once you learn the rhythm, which is essentially don't stop and keep going, because everyone's watching you, you'll be fine. I think Vietnam and Southeast Asia have, I think, been the most influential and generated the most work for me. And I think it's because I've spent the most time there. So I lived in Singapore for 2 separate summers. So, yeah. Other questions? Extra credit?
Yeah, Franklin, I thought it was interesting that you brought up the irony behind like watching sports and the different emotions that go into it. But I know you're a sports writer yourself, and so I was wondering if you can elaborate on those type of poems that you.
Well, sports are, first off, like sports are super dope, right? Like they're so fun, they're so beautiful. Like athletic contests are millennia old, but they're also entrenched in now this really pernicious, evil capitalism, right? Like these billionaire owners are making taxpayers pay for stadiums, right? Stadia that they could build. You know, so there's a deep irony, I think, involved in being a sports fan, that is like, it's weird to like think about, let's just say the quarterback, my team, the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, who's making $5 million a year, and it's weird to say somebody's being exploited when they make $5 million, but they are, right? But then you think about people that go into the stadium and the ways in which they're being exploited for, you know, it's about $100 for a good ticket. You spend $50 on beer, you know, you got to pay $50 to, anyway, it's expensive. So I guess I'm really interested in the ways in which like this classical, beautiful thing of watching athletic contests has been corrupted by capitalism, right? And the ways in which I'm still a dum-dum who's like totally gonna watch the NFL and totally gonna watch the NBA and the MLB. I'm not a hockey guy, but like it's just I guess there's a deep irony in being a sports fan, a woke sports fan, because like yeah, like Cap should kneel and whatever, right? That's beautiful, and I support the protests. But like, also, there's still this massive, weird exploitation. So it just comes down to, again, I guess the ways in which capitalism has like, sort of, you know, adulterated or you know, fucked up this like beautiful organic thing. Does that make sense, Nate?
Yeah. So just to follow that up, would you say that like you're calling people to action, or you're just kind of pointing it out?
Well, pointing it out is the first step to action, right? And it's a lot better than me standing, I mean, I guess it's ironic to say, like, standing at a podium and saying blah, 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 because I literally just did that. But, like, like, I guess I'm not interested in, and my students, current and former, will know that I think political poetry should not be pedantic, right? Should not have a soapbox, should nudge the reader towards what she or they or he could do in the future. So I guess I think awareness is the first step towards action, and calls to action often wind up being, again, sort of pedantic or polemic in ways that I think are harmful.
This question's for the both of you. How do you believe social media has helped or hurt the poetry industry, I guess? It's not really the right word.
You want me to take this one?
Well, I can.
Yeah. No?
Hurt? Helped? It's both.
Yeah.
It's both, right? I mean, like, it just like anything else, like, has social media helped or hurt politics? Like, it's done both, right? It's helped people become aware of social issues they may not be aware of, but it's also allowed, like, your aunt to have a platform to blabber on, right? So it's the same kind of thing. or uncle or what have you. So like, it's the same thing with poetry where like, it's dope to have a platform, like, you know, that's how I think we kind of got to know each other a little bit, was just through like posting, like, you know, here's some new Indians with books, right? But like, the flip side of that is like, then there's all those like weird arguments and all this shit. Like all the shit you see on Facebook about politics or what have you has also translated itself into the poetry world. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think it like also it can lend itself to oversaturation and also like a dilution of content because there's so much. You don't get to stay with one thing. You're getting information too fast, which is both. But on a personal level, like it just fucks with my brain. And like if I look at Facebook, I can't write for shit at all because I'm just like,
But we were Instagramming hard, like just.
Instagram's cool though. That's just pictures. That's just pictures.
Like, let's take some selfies by the water, right? Like, I mean. That was
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. You guys got a really great lake over there. I spaced the word. I was like, it's not an ocean. It's oceanic, but it's an inland ocean. Yeah.
I'm going to use the lake as a segue into my question, which is about land, because in both of your poems, you both seem to have a very special relationship with and value for land and for the land. And yet it seems different. You have different tones that come forward when you talk about it. So I don't have a very well-formed question, but I'd love it if you talked about sort of your relationship with the land, where it came from, what you're expressing, anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, part of it could be just, you know, in ideology, we're supposed to take care of the earth because it takes care of us. There's certain things you're not supposed to do to it or extract from it. For instance, coal, uranium is all supposed to stay in the earth. And the lesson in that is like when it is extracted, it will destroy you, and we definitely see that. Uranium is used to make the atomic bomb, right? Coal and oil are, you know, drive our cars and
Yeah, I was gonna say we used like a car to get here, right? That's the,
yeah, I love my truck. Fuck.
right? Like that's the trouble of it, right? Like we're benefiting from this stolen shit, right? Like we're benefiting from settler colonialism. We are, but it doesn't mean it doesn't suck, and it doesn't mean we can't acknowledge and push against that. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, there's at this point there's like a certain responsibility, I suppose, and I don't know. I just like nature, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, I have all these tattoos on my, of course, but like, the main ones are the 4 sacred mountains, you know, and I have those on my body. But also, I'm not supposed to have tattoos as a Diné person, and you know, that's just my problem with authority. So, yeah, be it political or like from the gods, I'm like, yeah, whatever, gods. I'll get tattoos.
So again, there's this weird, from 1492 on, Indigenous folks have been forced to be complicit, right, in what is going on here. And so, you know, we drove the car here, right? Like we're forced to be complicit in that, and so yeah, just that's such a complicated question, right? Like there was like, if we think about here, like are we underground right now? Are we underground? So like this had to be, at some point there was land that got dug into, right, to create this space, right? So just thinking about how there was grass at one point, right? I mean, just thinking about that, it fucks with me all the time. Everywhere you go to a Walgreens and you're like, man, you know, this, who knows what this was, right? Like you go to just buy some water and then, you know, so does that make sense too? Just that weird balance of complicity. of unfortunate complicity.
Yeah, Bojan, were you a writer before you became an electrician? And can you like talk about the transition from being an electrician going into a writer?
I mean, yeah, I think I've always, I mean, I started, I think, writing in like when I was a senior in high school. I was a very poor high school student. I ditched a lot and was almost expelled. But I was ditching to like go read books. Yeah, to like go to the library, and I was reading like Euripides and sitting in a coffee shop, and I had a job, so I worked for Pepsi as a merchandiser. So I was like, I'd rather make money than sit in this bullshit AP English class, right? Yeah, so I mean, I've always been a reader. I love reading. And yeah, I guess I've just kind of always written just as, I guess, a way to, as therapy sometimes. So when I had to go to therapy for anger management and addiction to pharmaceutical pills, and all from being sexually and physically abused as a kid, right? So you can't just let that shit hang out. So writing has, helped.
Were you asked, do you mind if I ask, were you asked to like write as part of your therapy? Or did that just come?
No, they
You know what I'm
encouraged
saying?
it. Yeah, I mean, I always wrote. So I think it wasn't until undergrad I just took all the English courses I could, because that was what I took. Religion and English courses, and that was my thing. Didn't really know what I was going to do with the degree. I took 3 years off before I got a master's, and moved to Alaska and was a framer. I just liked construction because it was outside, didn't have to work with a lot of people. I liked the physicality of it. I liked building things, right? It didn't make sense until maybe I was like 28 that I started seeing like, oh, I can do both, or like I can do everything. Like there really doesn't have to be a separation between all these things. I mean, there's cultural, like I guess there's like forms or molds you fit into, because all my fellow construction workers are just like, they would work a long day and then go home and drink like a 12-pack, and that was fine. But I'd go and sit at a bar and read because I didn't want to talk about how shitty the day was. Like I already went through the day, I didn't want to like commiserate like, oh God, it's fucking nails. Like, yeah. I was there. That was 2 hours ago, right?
But like, what do you think the function of that disconnect is? Like, why do you think people wanted to get home? I mean, of course, like folks want to go home and drink or whatever, or like just cool off the day, but like, is there something fundamental in that, like they just wanted to go home and drink and like watch TV or whatever, versus you wanting to go read? Like, why didn't they want to go read? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I don't know. They're just dumb motherfuckers. I don't know. No.
Like, is there some? Do you know what I mean? Like, what is it about? They're just like.
I don't know. I think a lot of them had families. Or relationships, I don't think I got into my first serious relationship till I was like 32 or something. I just liked being alone. I don't know. I'm mostly an introvert, so like if I don't have to leave the house, it's where I'm at. Yes.
So how old are you? You look really young.
Oh. I'm
If I
old.
may ask.
I'm old. No, I just was telling Franklin, like last night I had this like early midlife crisis with my wife, because we're thinking of having a kid. And I was like, I'm going to be 40 in 2 years. I'm useless. What have I done with my life? And she's like, motherfucker, shut up. Let's just take the dog for a walk, So I'm 38. Or I usually say, oh, I'm 28 again for the 10th time. Yeah.
I want to ask kind of so hearing the writing and then hearing you talk, I think the way you talk after this too, the sense of like, and this relates to the work you do and the way you talked about sort of going over those interesting so the sense of like constructing a thing, and whereas Franklin sounds more like walking around Hanoi, like you just
Oh,
gotta
yeah.
go.
Just go,
you
yeah.
know? And so if you could talk a little bit about like, you know, that process of constructing a piece of writing or sort of like recording the motion, like, which is the sense like, you know, like that just sort of expansion of things, you know, just each of you, like how, you know, what that process is for you of putting together a piece of writing. Is it, you know, piece by piece? Is
Yeah.
it a kind of, wow, just like ride this momentum until it stops?
Like a puke?
Your word, not mine.
I mean, I feel, because I have students, present and former, I feel like I should say that like revision is, because I always teach that, right? Like you have to revise, we're gonna revise our pieces over and over. I'm not a reviser personally. I feel like every poem you write, like if it doesn't work or whatever, it doesn't get published, then like that's just like the next, then you just write another poem, you know? And that's something I've always need to get better at, because everyone else revises like crazy, I think. And I teach revision like for a reason, right? Because I do believe in revision, but I'm just like very lazy, right? So like I like write a poem and I'm like, yo, this is gonna get published, or it doesn't, you know? And then it's like, fuck it, I'll write another poem. So it's a little different now that I'm writing about the Trail of Tears. I'm writing like historically, because I feel like I have to do right, like by all the folks that got killed and raped and all this like terrible, awful shit that happened. Like I have to do right by like my ancestors and by the dead, right? So I'm a little more careful now, but like the poems you heard mostly are just one draft singularly. You heard what came out the first time I sat down and typed. But I don't know about you. You seem like a reviser, man.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, 20 revisions at least, you know. And I think I equate it to like, I mean, if anyone's ever built a house or anything, done any sort of construction work, there's a lot of like refuse and waste that happens. So you're always constantly thinking like, okay, if I cut this piece of wood here, can I use this for something else, some blocking or something else? So you're always constantly thinking about like how you can economize all this stuff that you're wasting. And so when I write heavily in forms, and then I try to get it as close to the form as possible. For instance, Arc Flash is a sestina, and it failed as a sestina because the rhyme scheme was so limiting. But then once I get it there, I'll leave it alone, and then I'll break free of the form to let the poem do what it needs to do. And I use syllabics a lot. Here's my secret weapon. No. I use 3 books like religiously, and the first one's called The Sounds of Poetry by Robert Pinsky. It's kind of how you get sonic values out of words. The Book of Forms by Lou Turco, which is like every form you ever wanted and didn't know you wanted. There's a lot of Welsh forms that are really cool. And then the Princeton Encyclopedia of Poetics, which is,
doorstop, man?
yeah. It's a weapon as well.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
I know a dude who broke a guy's nose with it.
Yeah, you can do these things.
Yeah.
It's like this big.
Huh.
So yeah, I mean,
What do you use that for?
confusion. I mean, I'll like if I find a form I'm interested in, like this is like why I love reading. I'll research the hell out of it. Like I'll read about its history. I'll read as many different examples as possible, and to the point that like I just look at it and I'm like, I don't know anything. Like I don't know what I'm doing. I really have no idea. And then there's comfort in that, because it's like, well, it's a starting point, and you know, rules are meant to be broken to some degree, right? So, yeah, I mean, Currents is like, I don't know how many drafts I did from that book.
It's an old book. Right?
It's old, yeah.
Well, that actually seems to be like a beautiful
Yeah. And then you're free.
So, thank you again.